So I wanted to talk about Shekinah being the divine presence in both Merkabah mysticism as well as Kabbalah. And so we need to delve into the mystery of Shekinah. Shekinah, often described as the indwelling presence of the divine, is one of the most profound and elusive concepts in Merkabah mysticism. Shekinah is not mentioned explicitly in the Hebrew Bible, but emerges from rabbinic literature and evolves into a central figure in later mystical traditions, particularly in Kabbalah and the mysticism of Merkabah. Often understood as the feminine aspect or eminence of God, Shekinah simultaneously represents closeness and exile, light and darkness, compassion and judgment. In Kabbalah, Shekinah is not merely an abstract presence, but a dynamic force, the last of the 10 sefirot on the tree of life, intimately connected with human consciousness and the restoration of divine harmony. In Merkabah mysticism, Shekinah is linked to the mystical vision of the divine chariot as well as throne, guiding the initiate through a travel in the celestial realms. So this video is going to explore this multi-layered meaning of Shekinah within this mysticism, delving into the roots in biblical and rabbinic thought, how she is transformed in the Kabbalah, and her role in the mystical journeys of Merkabah, as well as any contemporary resonance. By examining Shekinah through the lens of Kabbalah and Merkabah mysticism, we uncover not only the archetype of divine femininity, but also the blueprint for spiritual elevation, cosmic repair, and return of divine unity. So let's talk about Shekinah in rabbinic tradition. The foundations of the divine presence would begin with the term Shekinah, which derives from a Hebrew root, shkhn, meaning to dwell or reside. Though not found in the Hebrew Bible, the concept of God's indwelling presence permeates the scriptures. For example, God's presence indwelling in the tabernacle, Mishkan, Exodus chapter 25, verse 8, the burning bush, and atop Mount Sinai all gesture towards the Shekinah, although she is not explicitly named. Rabbinic texts also explicitly develop this notion. The Talmud frequently references the Shekinah as accompanying the Jewish people, especially during exile, suffering, and so forth. Whenever 10 people gather to study Torah, the Shekinah rests among them. Perkei Avat 3:6. So it becomes a relational presence manifesting in human acts of devotion, compassion, and justice. She is the comforter of the exiled. She is the divine that stoops to be near humanity. Already in the rabbinic tradition, Shekinah is gendered, described with feminine imagery, as well as being described as a person weeping for Israel, as being exiled with them, and as yearning for restoration. These early sources prepare the ground for the rich symbolism and cosmic roles that Shekinah will later assume in the Kabbalistic texts. So let's look at the Kabbalistic cosmology, the sefirot, and the role of Shekinah. Kabbalah, the Jewish mystical system that flowered in medieval Spain and Provence, reconfigures the universe as a complex interplay of divine emanations called the sefirot. These 10 attributes are both aspects of God as well as metaphysical vessels throughout which the divine interacts with the world. They range from Keter, which is the crown, to Malkut, which is the kingdom. And it is in Malkut that Shekinah is most fully revealed. Shekinah is the feminine receptacle, the gateway between the higher worlds and the earthly realm. She is both the queen and the bride, reflecting the divine light of the upper Sephiroth. In its capacity, Shekinah is the manifest presence of God in creation. She is also Nukva, the female counterpart in the divine Zyzigi, which is destined to reunite with Tiferet, the masculine Sephirah, symbolizing harmony, beauty, and the centrality of the divine. Shekinah's role in Kabbalah is both cosmic and moral. Her separation from the upper realms, often attributed to human sin, creates a dissonance in the divine world, a condition known as the Shevirat HaKelim, the shattering of the vessels. Human beings, through acts of mitzvah, prayer, and mystical intention, which is kavanah, participate in tikkun, the repair and reunification of Shekinah with her consort, restoring cosmic order. Thus, the spiritual work of a mystic becomes the romance and redemption of the divine feminine. So let's talk about the bride in exile and how Shekinah is our divine feminine. One of the most potent symbols in Kabbalah is Shekinah as the bride in exile. The Zohar, which is the foundational mystical text of Kabbalah, depicts Shekinah as wandering among the people of Israel during their diaspora, veiled and sorrowful, awaiting her reunion with the bridegroom Tiferet. She is exiled not only geographically but spiritually, her light dimmed by the alienation between the divine and the mundane. This imagery resonates deeply with both the Jewish historical experience as well as the mystical yearning for redemption. Shekinah weeps at the Western Wall, mourns the temple's destruction, and yet she is never absent. She is the mother who never abandons her children, the spark of holiness in every soul. Her presence is accessible through compassion, justice, beauty, and the study of hidden Torah. The Kabbalists, especially Isaac Luria and his followers in Safed, expanded upon this exilic theology. Lurianic Kabbalah teaches that divine sparks from the shattered vessels are embedded in all aspects of creation. The Shekinah dwells in these sparks, and the human spiritual labor helps to liberate and elevate her. This gives meaning to every act, every blessing, every ethical choice, or mystical meditation. This becomes an act of reuniting with the divine lovers, as well as an echo of cosmic love and repair. So now let's get into the chariot, the throne, and the hidden Shekinah, and look at Merkabah mysticism. Long before Kabbalah, Jewish mystics of the early centuries of the Common Era were engaged in Merkabah mysticism, which is the mystical tradition centered around visions of the divine chariot, the Merkabah, which is described in Ezekiel chapter 1. These texts, preserved in works like the Hekalat Rabbati and the Maseh Merkabah, they speak of ascents through the heavenly places, the Hekalat, and toward the throne of God, which is guarded by angels and veiled in mysteries. In these texts, the Shekinah is not always explicitly named, but her presence and essence permeates the entire experience. The Kavod, glory of God, surrounded by angelic choirs and fiery wheels, is often a veiled manifestation of Shekinah. The initiate, or Yoreh Merkabah, which is the descender into the chariot, must be spiritually pure, ritually prepared, and guided through the labyrinth of heaven. The journey is dangerous, requiring passwords and seals, but the goal is union, or at least proximity to the divine presence. Later mystical traditions, including Kabbalah, retroactively interpreted these visions through the lens of Shekinah. The throne upon which God sits, the light which surrounds it, the voice that speaks from within the fire. These, in fact, are all dimensions of the Shekinah. She becomes the seat of divine authority. She becomes the manifestation of God's eminence, and she is also the intermediary who permits access to the otherwise unapproachable divine. So now, what about Shekinah in the feminine archetype? Let's look at it from a spiritual and psychological dimension. In contemporary spiritual discourse, Shekinah is often embraced as a Jewish embodiment of the divine feminine, a counterbalance to patriarchal imagery of God. Her nurturing, relational, as well as accessible nature has made her so central to Jewish feminine theology that it is important among the interfaith dialogues about the sacred feminine in all of its divine glory. Psychologically, Shekinah resonates with the Jungian archetypes of the anima, which is the inner feminine aspect of the psyche that connects one soul to another and to intuition. In this sense, Shekinah is not only a theological figure, but a mirror of inner wholeness. She represents integration, the marriage of conscious and unconscious, masculine and feminine, light and shadow. Spiritually, Shekinah invites us into a mysticism of presence, which is an awareness of the sacred in the ordinary. Her dwelling is not only in the heavens or in temples, but also throughout acts of love, in communal worship, in silence and tears. She is the part of the divine that accompanies us in suffering, walks with us in exile, and waits patiently for our return. Shekinah also is in liturgy, in mystical practices, as well as the contemporary version of the Kabbalah. The influence of Shekinah permeates Jewish liturgy as well as ritual. The Sabbath, for example, is personified in Kabbalistic tradition as the arrival of the Shekinah, the queen who blesses the home. The Friday evening Kabbalah Shabbat service welcomes her with songs like Lecha Dodi, which speaks of the bride dressed in splendor in the presence of peace. In the mystical practice, Shekinah is invoked through meditation, Kabbalistic prayer, and visualization. Practitioners align themselves with divine energies by focusing on the sefirot, especially Malkut, using the sacred names and symbols. The goal is to draw the Shekinah down to bring heaven to earth through spiritual elevation. Contemporary schools of Kabbalah, such as those inspired by the Kabbalah Center, have brought Shekinah into modern vocabulary, though not without some controversy. While some approaches may commercialize or simplify the mystical teachings, others have genuinely reawakened an appreciation for the divine presence, particularly among seekers who are yearning for intimacy with the sacred divine. In conclusion, when you deal with Shekinah, you are dwelling in the light of Shekinah. Because Shekinah is both a voice and a silence, a flame and a cloud. She is the divine light that both transcends and embraces. She has a presence that rests in the innermost chamber of being. Thus, in Kabbalah, she is the queen awaiting reunion. In Merkabah, she is the radiant glory that's on the throne. She suffers exile with us and promises restoration. She invites us to participate in Tikkun, to make our lives vessels for divine presence. Thus, to seek Shekinah is to seek holiness in the world as it is, to find the sacred in the broken, the beautiful in the mundane, the infinite in the moment. Whether in the silence of prayer, the radiance of Sabbath candles, or even the eyes of a stranger, Shekinah whispers that the divine is near. In embracing her, we are not merely ascending to heaven, we are allowing heaven to descend into us. Thus, each of us has a piece of Shekinah with us. And we should keep in mind that the divine spark that is in us is meant to be manifested. It is meant to grow and expand so that we become the very best versions of ourselves. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content.